Welcome to Elokus podcast. This is class number 10 in the discourse Naso Rosh 5672. This is the fourth discourse in the great Maayon B'Shasha Ekdimu. We are holding in the middle of chapter 13. Again, this is class number 10 in the fourth discourse. We are holding in towards the beginning of chapter 13 by the first parentheses. So, in continuation to last class, where we were going to develop and talk about the theme and the idea of achlifu dichtayu, which means that the lights can exchange vessels, which that itself is a proof that the lights themselves have already a certain design, because if the lights would be pure undefined, then the light in any vessel is always the same. So there's no light of kindness, there's no light of gevura. Each light is parav, meaning undefined. And therefore, what would it mean? That it's changing vessels. It never was meant to be in this vessel or that vessel. It's always a neutral light. The fact that we do say that the lights can switch vessels is an indication that the lights are already subtly designed. And that's why each light has its proper vessel. Yet we say there are times that the lights don't obey the natural flow where each light matches up with its own vessel, but they cross over the board, and the light from the right side of kindness goes into the vessels on the left side of stringency, and the lights from the left side go over to the right side. So this is where he's going to prove with this. He's going to prove from this concept of ichlifu dichtayu. So we started bringing an example, which we're holding just at the beginning of it, because we didn't even get to the part where he's proving his point. Actually, from the part we were learning, it would almost seem like it's saying the opposite. The example that we were giving was from a teacher that teaches two different students. Each one takes the same concept, the same idea, the same teaching of the teacher, but slants it in accordance to the character of their own being. Right? The same argument, and depending on the character of the listener. Some people take this very argument and make the argument for stringency or for judgments, and the other person takes the very same argument and makes the argument for uses that as a reasoning for leniency. So what does it have to do? It has to do with the nature of the recipient. Okay? Now, this would seem to imply, basically, that there is no character to the light itself. The light is neutral. The idea of the teacher is pure. It's not in any way leaning this way or that way. And the character and definitions and therefore conclusions are only formulated in the vessels, which in this case would be the brains of the two students. The example we actually gave for this were the two great Mishnah leaders, Shammai and Hillel, where each one of them, they studied from the same teacher, either Shmaya or Avtalion, which were the great two teachers, and their students, Shammai and Hillel, both had complete different applications from the very same teachings. Shammai would most of the time be strict, and Hillel would most of the time be lenient. And as we discussed earlier, Shammai's stringency and strictness is associated with the fact that spiritually the soul of Shammai was rooted in the vessels of Gevura, in the containers, in the divine attribute of stringency, of Gevura, of judgment, of strictness, and the like. And that's why the soul of Shammai was always leaning to be strict. Like we all know that when the famous story, when the convert came to Shammai, or the person who wanted to convert, and he asked him to convert him when he's standing on one foot, Shammai kicked him chased him out of his office. He said, "What are you, crazy or something? I can teach you the entire Torah standing on one leg. Are you nuts?" So that's a strict response. Hillel had patience. Hillel said, "Yeah, Hillel taught him the one teaching that is like a fundamental principle, that which you do not like, do not do to your friend." And he said the rest of the Torah is all connected to this principle. In other words, treat others like you treat yourself. So that sensitivity is going to lead you to the observance of all the mitzvot. And Hillel converted him. What is this an indication? That Hillel, you can see, is a more gentler, sweeter type of soul, and Shammai is a tougher, stricter person. But yet they both came out of the same school. So that's because, what do we say? Which, you can ask the question, the teachers, what did they teach? Were they teaching leniency? Were they teaching strictness and discipline? The answer is, they were teaching abstract ideas. How that's going to be applied has yet to be decided based on whichever glass we pour it into. Pour it into a red glass, which red is the color of strictness, it'll be red. Pour it into a blue glass, which is the color of kindness, of chesed, it's going to be blue, the very same water. Okay? So, again, up till now, we don't have a proof to what he's trying to say, but we're going to get to that. But meanwhile, let's learn the parentheses. Okay? Today's class, we're not even going to get to the point, I think. We're going to learn the parentheses, because he's further going to elucidate this idea that the shape and the form of a certain concept evolves at a later stage. When concepts originate in their very original, pristine state, they are still very abstract and very unlimited. And they do not have this shape or that shape. They're very free. They're yet to be decided in which direction they will go. So that's the idea, that a teacher pulls a very abstract idea, delivers it to his students, which each one has a certain shape to their mind, like a certain particular shape of a cookie cutter, right? So this is a triangle and this is a square. Put the same dough into them and you're going to get a different result. You're going to have a hamantash, which is a Purim type of a food, which is a triangle. And then you're going to get a round latka's shape, whatever, of a different type of a shape, because it's already been received in the vessels and the containers that cut the idea to a certain shape. So this concept he's going to now develop. Let's read it inside, in the parentheses. And we can say, this is similar to what is explained in the idea of Or Mayim Rakia. There is a concept, I think it originates in the book of Formation, Sefer Yetzirah, where it speaks about the evolution of energy, and it says that there is an evolution of light, water, and then firmament. The way things evolve, which what that really means is, the tiny bit of understanding that we have of it. By the way, this Or Mayim Rakia creates the abbreviation of Emor. One of the Torah portions is Emor. Or Emor means to speak, which means to communicate, which means to pass an idea or a concept. So the three letters are Aleph, Mem, Resh, which are the acronym for Or, light. Mem stands for Mayim, for water, and Resh stands for Rakia. So what does this mean? It means as follows: that really we say that there's a process of evolution. The firmament is made up of water. The sages tell us that the Rakia, when God said, "Let there be a firmament," which we call has a name. Vayikra Elokim, God called the Rakia to the firmament. God called it Shamayim. Why does He call it Shamayim? So Rashi says, because the word Shamayim stands for Sham Mayim. Over there is water. That means that the Rakia is made up of water. Now Rashi also says it's made up of also Shamayim also has the word Eish in it. It doesn't have the full letter of Eish, but at least it has the shin of the Eish, the main letter of the Eish, of fire. And Rashi says it's Eish and Mayim. Yet, the word Mayim is fully spelled out in the word Shamayim. The word Eish, it only has one letter there, which is the shin, but not the aleph. Which means that the Rakia, the firmament, is more Mayim than it is Eish. It has Eish to it too, but it's more Mayim. Why? So we'll understand that based on what we're talking about. Let's leave that for a moment. The Rakia, the firmament, is made out of Mayim. However, when the water is in the Rakia, the water has become to a certain degree congealed. What makes up a firmament is congealed water. Now, I don't know. I have no idea what a firmament is exactly, what this means, and what do we mean congealed water. I would have to understand and have a very deep knowledge of the makeup of the outer space. I'm not exactly sure how we will define exactly what is the firmament. We're not going to go there, but we can trust what we're being told. That the rakia obviously is made out of Maayon, and the Zohar says iglida maya, that in the rakia the water has already become congealed. Sometimes, and there's another, I'll give you another association with that. In certain statements of, there are certain statements of in scripture, where it talks about the visions that the prophets have. And I didn't check up right before the class. I wasn't thinking of saying this, so I didn't check this up. But there is a phrase, I think it's literally from scripture somewhere. It might even be in Ezekiel, in Yechezkel, where it discusses the Merkava. It says that he beheld, the Navi, the prophet beheld, Rokia ke'ein hakerach. A Rokia, a firmament that looks like ice. So what is ice? Ice is congealed water, frozen water, when the water gets hardened and it gets frozen. Now we all know that water is shapeless. Water does not have a shape, right? It's fluid. Flows this way, flows that way. Doesn't have a shape. But when water forms into ice, it gets congealed, then it can congeal itself into a shape. Right? You see icicles. There are places in caverns where people could go exploring. They got the most gorgeous, especially if they have the right lighting on them, like these ice caves. And the most magnificent shapes and forms are formed by these icicles. So the ice, and you can imagine it being palaces. Now, sometimes it's made out of some other sediments, but I think there's I think I once watched some kind of a documentary or whatever of these magnificent caves of ice, where the water has congealed into every type of shape. It's beautiful. So only after it congeals does it take on a shape. The water itself, fluid. So what Sefer Yetzirah is saying, that there is a state called rakia, where water congeals. You don't have anything else but the water, but it's already a shape because that has congealed. Before that, it's in a state of mayim, of water. But water, at least, is containable. That means water is fluid, but if I take water and I put it into a cup, then the water will shape itself in accordance to the water, not the water essentially. If you freeze it, then it turns into an ice cube. Then it's going to remain in the shape even if you take the water out. But if you put water in a cup, the water is contained in a vessel, but in essence, it's still fluid. If you pour it out of the cup, it's not going to be at all in that shape. If you have a round cup, the water will be in a round shape. If you have a square bowl or a square type of a vase or something, and you're pouring the water into it, then the water is going to appear to be in a square shape, a rectangle, whatever shape it is, because water is essentially shapeless, but at least it's contained in the vessel, when there is a vessel. But the Kabbalah says like this, that the water originates, even before it becomes water, it's in a more subtler state. What is it? Then it's light. That really there is association between light and water. And the origination of water is really light. That's why we find, the sages tell us, that in every time it says by Elijah the prophet, by Eliyahu Hanavi, it says that there was light, it means rain. The Torah refers to the rain, Scripture refers to the water, which is the rain, as light. So it's explained in Chassidus. The reason for that is because really the origins of water is light. But light is far more shapeless even than water. Because light, you can't even contain it in a vessel. It has no light. Light doesn't become contained in any vessel. When the light is shining in a square box, the light is not square. The water becomes square, if you might say. The light is not circular in a circle. The light is what the light is. It's not shaped. It's not containable in any vessels. So light is the ultimate abstraction, and it's free and limitless. Once it turns into water, it already becomes more substantial, gets coarser, it gets closer to a shape, and then the final shaping of something is when it becomes congealed like ice, and that's the level called rakia. And we can understand that the Sefer Yetzirah is saying that all of everything, all the evolution of the divine infinite boundlessness as it makes its way down to form the shapes and definitions of existence, it goes through a process of these three stages, or Mayim Rakia. And this is to be found on every level, higher and higher and higher, as he's going to explain over here. Now let's take this into the subject that he's talking about now. He's talking about a teacher teaching a student. So, and we learned that when Shammai and Hillel received the teaching of the teacher, when Shammai hears this idea, he receives the concept, and it turns into a concept that demands discipline, that demands strictness. Hillel receives that very same thought, and in his mind, it turns into a concept that calls for leniency. Yesterday, we actually gave the example of it, where even by God you see that, right? That process. What's that? That there was a concept, an abstract concept, that the heart of man, the human heart, is corruptible and has an evil inclination from before the person even takes his first breath in this of air in this world. Before a baby is born, the evil inclination has already sneaked its way into the heart. Is that a reason to destroy man, or is that a reason to be very, very extremely patient with man? Well, ask a Shammai being. Shammai actually holds it was better for humans not to be created. He has that very, very judgmental type of a thing. He sees very pessimistic about the human thing, and he sees the human as very corruptible. And that's why he's got to be so strict. That's why you got to rein him in. So you got to be extra tough, right? That's Shammai. So if you asked the Shammai being and you said to him, hey, if God would have communicated to Shammai and said to him, hey, Shammai, listen up, man has a very corruptible heart, Shammai would respond, so destroy him. What do you need a headache for? There's no chances that the human will survive and will do good. And God speaks to Hillel, for example, and he says to him the same thought. I've noticed, I'm recognizing, or I understand, or I'm telling you that the human heart is already beginning to be corrupted from before it's born. As soon as you start moving into this world, already the heart is beginning to become corrupted. And Hillel says, oh my gosh, how can you blame people? So you have to be extra lenient and extra forgiving, because the heart is already at you don't even give him a fighting chance. So you have to forgive and help him make amends. And eventually, the person will gain mastery over their negativity, and they'll be able to, do something good. Same idea. So what do you see? What he's saying is, once it gets into Hillel, the concept gets into Hillel and Shammai's head, it becomes shaped and formed in a certain way. In Shammai's mind, it becomes a Gevura idea, an idea already with Gevura spice, which means it is already set on judgment. In Hillel's mind, it is now set with leniency. Same concept is perceived with the chesed form. And once it's in Hillel's head or Shammai's head, it's kind of, assuming to see it's possible to change, but it's kind of set that it's like an ice cube that has been shaped either a round ice cube or a square ice cube. But that's the way it is. It already took on what would you say earlier? It took on an an application which is fixed, a fixed application. So that's called rakia, that's firmament. But before the teaching was received in the mind of the student, it is in a state of water. When is that? When Shmaya, the teacher of Hillel and Shammai, when Shmaya and Naftalian are teaching the concept, when they're transmitting the concept, that's a state of water. It's a state of water. Because as we see, what's the proof? Water doesn't have a shape yet. You see that the very same teaching is going to take a complete different shape in Shammai's head, and in Hillel's head, it's going to be completely different. That's because it's shapeless water. It's like pouring water into an ice cube maker, and you're pouring the same water as the teacher. Imagine that you're standing with a bigger spout, okay, that can pour a lot, and you have aligned in the same pour, the same water that you're pouring is landing into two plastic ice cube makers. One of them is shaped rectangle, like we know ice cubes. The other one is shaped round. So here it's going to go into the round one, and then when you freeze it, it's going to become frozen round ice cubes, and there it's going to become square ice cubes. But in the teacher's mind, or even when it's coming out, it's still in a level of mayim, of water. But then there is even higher than that. When the teacher is not yet teaching, when the teacher is still in their abstract idea, thinking abstract thoughts, and beginning to toy with this, with the abstract concept of whatever they're perceiving. There, it's not even water. There's no vessels there even. It's pure light. Okay, it's not even leaning. It doesn't even have any leanings this way or that way at all. It's just an abstract of abstract. See, in our discussion right now, the first level, the level, the light level, is not as important as the latter two levels, the mayim, the water, and the rakia. The mayim being fluid, and the rakia, the firmament, being fixed and stiff and already designed. Let's read it inside. This is similar to what is explained in the idea of or and light and mayim and water, rakia and firmament. The maya, the water, naidi, is fluent. V'rekia, and the firmament, iglidu maya, is where the water becomes frozen and congealed. What does that mean? The mayim and ukudas hachachma, water is still the point of the idea, because we know every idea starts with chachma, with a flash. And then it goes into Bina. And what does Bina do? Bina begins to flesh it out and create already a structure of this abstract point. So the Bina is where the congealing is taking place. And that's why you can have two people who have the same epiphany, and yet their Bina, their explanation on it, the book they will write will be very different, although it has the same kernel of truth, the same idea behind it, but yet the formulation of it and development of it and the applications that derive from it could be very different, like we see Shammai and Hillel, because that's already the Bina part. The Mayim, the water, and Ukudas HaChachma is the point of Chachma. You can still bend it l'kol tzad, to every side. Like you can take it to leniency, or you can take it to stringency. Chulu, like we say. The Gimel Madreg is because these three levels of Or, Mayim, Rakia. Now, again, as we said, for our discussion, what's mainly important is the water and the firmament, but he's already introducing even an earlier stage of the three levels of Or, Mayim, Rakia. Hein exist bahashefa, in the influence. Shenimshach min hamashpia l'makabel, when the influencer is transmitting to the recipient, when a teacher and a student, for instance. The teacher is the influencer, the student is the influenced, the recipient. The Or, the light, to kamosh hashpa, hu adayin eitzel hamashpia behelam. The light is when the mashpia, the influencer, has the idea inside of him before they're even teaching. It's just deep inside their mind. They're conceiving the idea, but they're conceiving it completely to themselves. They're not even in the mode of teaching. They're just to themselves absorbing, experiencing a phenomenon, an idea. And that's called Or, that's light. Umayim, and then water, once it's taking on already a revealed form, it's coming into revelation, from the influencer to the recipient. The teacher is already bringing the idea down, preparing to teach it, and then eventually even teaching it. But even then, it still has a fluidity, a fluidness that it can be this way and that way. But the firmament, is once it's grasped, to the recipient, when the recipient receives it and takes it. As stated elsewhere. And now the same concept is now applied, that the water is still colorless. In the intelligence of the teacher, the applications of how you're going to apply this idea, the emotional leaning that is going to be derived from this objective idea, the subjective response of how should you respond? How will I feel about it? Will I get enraged by it, or will I feel compassion by it? So when it's still in the pure realm of the teacher, it doesn't have any leanings this way or that way. Like we said by Shmai and Naftalian, the teachings were still very pure. But when it comes into their understanding, who is them? That's the students. When it goes into the student Naso, his chalkos, it becomes a division, the chesed, the gevura of kindness and strictness, in accordance to how they process it. If through the light, through the prism of kindness, or for the prism. As we're soon going to see, we cannot say, that, and this is where we're going to attach it to what we were saying earlier, that the characterization of kindness and severity begins only in the students. The abstract idea of the teacher has already the potential within it to be, it has nuances of kindness and nuances of strictness in the abstract thought, but it's very benign. What happens is, and this is what we're going to talk about much more tomorrow, is when Shammai grabs the idea, he grabs it and highlights the faint gevura elements that were hidden in the idea, even in the idea of the teacher. That potential was there, but it was very, very subtle and very unnoticed. Shammai grabs hold of them because it's a vessel of gevura, and he manifests and he brings it forth. He fans it and develops it and brings it into full expression in a gevura manner. That's why by him it becomes very gevuridik. Hillel, because he's a man of kindness, picks up on the subtle notes of potential kindness that there is in the teachings of the teacher, and formulates his entire the entire idea under the umbrella of the kindness, and it becomes an idea of it becomes a gentle, kind idea in Hillel's mind. And stated elsewhere, but again, in the world of the teacher, you don't even notice these subtleties. All you notice is just plain water, which means you don't notice the potential for it being a square or for it being round. It's just water. It's when it goes into the vessels, that's when it becomes fixed, defined, separated. Shammai's mind, it becomes, in his world, it becomes a reason for strictness, and in Hillel's mind, it becomes a reason for leniency. Now it's explained elsewhere that this process of light, water, and firmament exists higher and higher and higher on every level where things evolve. In all worlds and above the worlds, in the deepest, most sublime levels of the evolution of the Or Ein Sof, you can find the process of these three levels, Or, Mayim, Rakia, Ubesharshan, and in their root, if you trace them all the way to the root, Hempchenas Gimel Rishainis, these are the three sfirot, the first three spheros of Atik, of the Ancient of Days. That means in Keter, we said the external part of Keter is called Erech Anpin. The internal part of Keter is called Atik Yom, and Ancient of Days. In Ancient of Days, we discussed already, remember, that even in a world where there is no vessels over there is already Sphirot, there's the possibilities, the hidden dimension of 10 Sphirot, and those Sphirot are divided by the 7 emotions and the three intellectual faculties, the Chachma Bina Das of Atik. So the first 3 of Atik, that's already the process. The light of the level of oil on this in this scheme in Atik Yom and in the first 3 would be the Chachma of Atik. The Maayon element would be the Bina element of Atik, and the Rakia element would be the Das element of Atik. Or maybe in this level we don't talk about Chachma Bina Das, but we talk about Keser Chachma Bina. So if we will do that, we will say the Keser is the Or, the Chachma is the Mayim, the water, and the Bina is the Rakia. That would be more consistent with the definitions we were given over here. And even higher than that, the Gimel Rosh and Lid Rosh, and the 3 heads to the heads. Sheheim B'chinas, which is a concept that is discussed in Kabbalah, that is called Or Kadmoin, a primary light, Vitzach, and a brilliant light, Umitzuchtzach, and I don't even know what that means. Tzach, the difference between Tzach and Mitzuchtzach. They both represent brilliance, but there's a difference between them. I should check that out. But in any case, on this level, it's only light. All 3 of them are called Or, but within light itself, you have the purest of light, the light as it is already closer to the level of water, and then the light that is hinting to the concept already of Rakia, firmament. So this exists on all levels, and then tomorrow, Be'ezus Hashem, and the next year, we're going to go back to discovering how the process of what does it mean that the lights exchange in different vessels. Again, I know that right now things feel a little scattered, but we're going to hopefully tighten the screws tomorrow and bring it all together. Thank you. Meanwhile, I didn't say this in a while, let the Mashiach be here today.